What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court. I am Sean Murphy, and today we are talking about what we are seeing so far in the preseason. The NBA preseason started this past Sunday and has been going on now for almost an entire week. And in just the short amount of time that we've had basketball back, which, by the way, thank you, basketball, for being back, we have seen a lot of great performances already. And one team I want to talk about today in particular is the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets are 1 year off of trading away James Harden and are fresh into their rebuild, coming off of the worst record in the entire NBA, and also the opportunity to draft at the second overall pick, getting Jalen Green from the G League Ignite. Now, as a Pistons fan, I'm going to do everything that I can to stay objective. I can do it. I promise. I will talk as fairly and as balanced as possible about his game. I promise. Overall, I think he's probably going to win Rookie of the Year. Granted, I think part of that's because I think Cade Cunningham is going to do a lot of things that might not show up on the stat sheet, and all Jalen Green is focused on is padding the stat sheet, but we don't have to talk about that today. Anyway, be sure to leave a like and comment down below what you think of this Houston Rockets roster and what do you think their potential is. And with that, let us jump right into the video. So looking at the starting five of this Houston Rockets roster, it is clear that they have overhauled almost entirely. Looking at a starting five going into this season with Kevin Porter Jr. as your point guard, Jalen Green as your shooting guard, Eric Gordon at the small forward, Christian Wood at the power forward, and Daniel Tice running center. This is a very interesting lineup that they're putting together, and I do like the idea of Christian Wood playing that 4 position and playing power forward, not really having to focus as much on being a powerful presence in the paint, but more so just on his ability to score the basketball. I actually think that's going to be a really good fit for Christian Wood, and I think as the guy that should be their number one option going into this season, because Christian Wood is their best player as it stands, I think he's going to have himself a pretty good season, and it gives him the opportunity to make changes to the lineup, and they can use Christian Wood as a small ball 5, which in that position, they can get out and run more, they can be a team in transition, they can use their youth, their speed, and their athleticism to their advantage. And I think looking at how they played this game, I think that is exactly what they're going to want to do, because you do have some young guns in the backcourt that really can push the pace and make some pretty incredible plays. Let's start with the obvious. Let us start with Jalen Green. Jalen Green did shoot pretty poorly in this game, I'll be honest. He did shoot 4 of 14, which isn't really anything to take of from a preseason game. First of all, it's only one game. Second of all, it's a preseason game. And third, his season is just getting started. Now, I do think that Jalen Green does have to work on being effective in ways other than scoring when on the court, because Jalen Green does have a tendency to really slow things down, and even at times he won't stop shooting. Like, there are just multiple points in this game where it was evident that he did not have it, and the last thing that he should be doing is shooting more threes. But the thing that Jalen Green wanted to do was shoot threes. And the other thing about Jalen Green that I'm noticing right off the bat is he is definitely going to be a volume scorer in that light if that does increase, but also I really do think that Jalen Green needs some muscle, and he needs some muscle quickly. Now, granted, this is a pretty common thing that happens with a lot of players that are coming into the NBA. You have a lot of kids that come in and they're fresh off of AAU ball and year-round. They're really just playing games year-round. There's really no off-season. And so, therefore, they're not really spending as much time at the gym, focusing on weight training and getting their body right for the NBA. Rather, it is about getting as many reps as possible. So I think Jalen Green now being in a situation where for the past 2 years, he has had the opportunity that basketball is his profession, I think he's going to have an advantage coming into the league for sure. And if he keeps showing his flashes of amazing playmaking and abilities on the offensive end and can keep passing more and finding his teammates in open situations, but also if he could just keep getting muscle and getting better on the defensive end, because that is definitely his weakness as it stands. So overall, I think Jalen Green is definitely a promising young player. I think he's definitely going to be in the mix of a Rookie of the Year potential, and I definitely see a ceiling for him that is very similar to Bradley Beal, which is I don't think he's going to be the best player on a championship team, as there's really only a few guys in the league that you can name that are that, but he is going to be that next tier player, in my opinion, where he is still a superstar type player or a all-star type player, but he's not the best player on a championship team. Now, the player that did raise some eyebrows and have a really impressive performance for the Rockets was Kevin Porter Jr., who was able to get 25 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, a steal, and a block. And Kevin Porter Jr. is actually going to be filling in and playing as the Houston Rockets point guard this season, with the reason that he went down to the G League last year was to learn how to play the point. And towards the end of his season coming back with Houston, he did have a pretty solid stretch, but now is being poised to be one of the 2 building blocks of this franchise with him and Jalen Green in the backcourt. Honestly, I like this pairing. I think it's really intriguing, but the thing about Kevin Porter Jr. that I've noticed is that even though he does have a creative vision on the court, he does have the ability to see things that other players don't. He also is very, very turnover happy. He will pass that ball even if he can't fit it through that hole. And he did get 4 turnovers last night, which is not the greatest number that you can get from your starting point guard, but it's also not the worst. He was clearly their best player on the court throughout that game. He was the one that had it, and overall, he played really well. But the other thing to note is that this is a preseason game. This is against the Washington Wizards, who are one of the worst defensive teams in the league. And like I said, it's a preseason game. You did it one time. Can you do it throughout the regular season? Are you going to be able to make good plays that are ultimately going to lead to you being in positions to succeed? The place where young point guards struggle the most is going to be on the road during high pressure situations. So even though you really can't take much out of the performance that Kevin Porter Jr. had, it does show his ceiling of if he keeps developing and gets more reps as the starting point guard, he's definitely going to be in a position to succeed and could possibly even get some most improved player votes, especially if he keeps playing like that. Otherwise, you do have one of the other Houston Rockets first round selections in their center, Sengun, and he is the real deal. I do think that we are talking a little too high of praises for this young player right now, especially because he hasn't played against real NBA centers yet. There were moments where he did look a little overwhelmed from the physicality of Montrezl Harrell. I would love to see what he does against the likes of a Giannis Antetokounmpo. That is just me personally. Until I see him play against some of the best bigs in the league, I don't really know what to think of him just yet. And overall, I think that's kind of where this roster is at this point, is that there's a ton of talent and there's a lot of potential, but until you see them play some really good teams, you don't know what their true ceiling is going to be this year. And quite frankly, I think I do know the answer, because I think they are going to be a bottom team in the league again. I think this team is clearly constructed to try and make another run at the lottery. I think this is a team that is still in the stages of acquiring as much talent as humanly possible. I think for the next year or two, they're still going to be a lottery team. Next year, I could see them getting another top 5 pick. I think the year after that, probably top 10. And then after that, you would think that Jalen Green would be developing. You would hope that Kevin Porter Jr. is getting better. You would hope that Kenyon Martin Jr. and other players on this team are there and ready to support them and hopefully even make a run in the playoffs. But we are not at that place yet. We are very much still in the beginning, and with a franchise that had so many future assets that have been traded away in order to try and win a championship over the past few years, this is a team that is on asset acclimation as much as humanly possible. The more they can accumulate, the better. And so that's where I think the Houston Rockets are at. I really do hope that Steven Silas does have a better season as a head coach, because all of the things that he had to deal with this past year, and now they're in a situation where they have to wait what happens with John Wall. Thankfully, that's not a distraction for them at this present time. You have guys like Eric Gordon that they could potentially trade away at some point, but his contract is just pretty big, and not a lot of teams are going to want to take on that money. So they are in a very interesting situation, and I definitely think that they are turning into having one of the better young cores in the NBA. Personally, as a Pistons fan, I would still take who we have in Detroit. I'm very happy with Cade Cunningham. And yes, I'm going to mention that in a Jalen Green video. But with that, I want to thank you so much for watching. I want to know what you think of these Houston Rockets in the comment section down below. And I will catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.